morning. I was laying in bed thinking, wow, I just feel abnormally calm and abnormally relaxed today, which is awesome because it's taken a few days to get to this point, but this is why I love being away from home. It sort of takes me to a place where I feel like I don't have, nothing changes in my life, nothing changes, but being away from home, something does. So somebody else wrote to me this morning, and thank you for your message, and said, I'm feeling the same way today. And I was like, you need to let me know if you're all feeling this strange sense of calm, because it's such a beautiful feeling. It's been lovely catching up with some of you here too. So I had a beautiful visit with a beautiful girl yesterday. And I'm really, really happy that I got to meet her in real life. There is something so beautiful about meeting people that you've already built some sort of rapport with. Beautiful. All right, so we're going to do what's cracking online. Okay, and then once I finish my readings this morning, I'm heading out to the beach. So it's been a long time since I've been to the beach, but I feel like I'm really in the place for it this morning. All right, let's see what's going on in the What's Cracking world. We're using the Tarot of the Divine again because I love the deck. You know me, I'm really fickle. All right, so we have the Hierophant coming out. What a beautiful card to start the reading off with. This is exactly the energy that feels today. Hey, how are you, Joan? I'm glad to hear everything is going good for you. I feel like there is this sort of energy of finding some sort of stability here. So maybe something in your life has changed. Maybe you've had some sort of movement, I want to say, that's helped you to get into a much more calm place here. The Hierophant often talks about stability. So maybe you've been sort of, I don't know, maybe you've been going through a rough patch, for example, and then things seem to fall in place. So we have the Hierophant coming through. We have the Wheel of Fortune coming through, which sort of makes me feel that you're being put somewhere or moved somewhere. Hey, how are you, Teresa? It's like you're being moved just slightly here to put you on the path. Maybe you've been sort of, you know, either sort of going through a time where you felt a little disconnected, I want to say. And it feels to me like, there we go, I've got to just move that out the way. I feel like that's the thing with doing lives, you get all these notifications popping down. I feel like the universe is moving you. See, the Four of Cups is here with the Ace of Cups. Okay, so for many people here, you're either aligning yourself with self-love, maybe after a period of time of feeling quite dissatisfied, which is bringing you into some sort of, they're saying continuum, but I'm trying to understand what they mean by that. It's sort of bringing you into like a time when you're aligning with things a lot more than you have recently. So how are you, Cosmic Flower? So it's like this energy of being just shifted enough to align with your pathway to manifest. So you may have been in a time where you've been finding that very difficult. Yes, it's a beautiful deck, isn't it? Hello. Because you've got the Ace of Cups, and I'm feeling like, yes, you might be aligning with love, which is really beautiful, but I feel like this is more aligning with yourself, which is bringing you in this beautiful sense of stability. Hey, Jeanette, how you going? So I just want to check out the world cards behind that. Okay, all right, now I understand. For many of you here, you've closed that cycle. You've closed out some sort of cycle here. Now, from my readings and from what I'm understanding, I mean, everybody's cycle's slightly different, but you're all aligned. So it's like the cycles are closing for you to bring you all in alignment. It's trying to bring us all in alignment. So if people haven't done the work, or they haven't really started to understand their greater purpose or where they stand in life, it's like they might have trouble just sort of getting into alignment here. But I do feel this is happening for you, or this closing of a cycle. For some of you, I feel like it's happening naturally. For others of you, you're sort of putting in a little bit of work to understand how to close the cycle out. Now, the sort of things that are coming through with people around cycles, A lot of them about not believing in yourself, not believing yourself, not really trusting the flow of life, and not really understanding your greater purpose. Okay, that's what Spirit is saying here. So there's sort of this energy of going on a plateau. It's like you've been on some sort of plateau and you've just sort of hit something here which is about to raise your vibration and put you in alignment, and you're closing something out because of that. So if you're not aware of what the cycles are, if it's not coming to you in a logical sort of thinking, or in your dreams, or in some sort of awakening, epiphany, realization, I feel that it's coming soon. I don't think that everybody's to this point yet, but you may be starting to understand your lack. And like I said, lack mentality, poverty consciousness, that's not just financial. Sometimes that can be around you believing that you deserve love. Hey, Gigi, how you going? So there have been people who've said to me that they've been looking for love and love isn't coming in. You're not just going to settle for someone anymore. You're not going to settle for the sort of relationships that you've had in the past, because you have raised your vibration now. How are you, Sue? So what you're doing now is you're aligning yourself with someone, with a person, with someone who can love you in the way that you are ready for love. But in order to be in that place, your level of love of self has to be vibrating more or better or higher than it was before. Because you're being aligned with somebody here. But in order to get that, in order to be there, you've got to be able to understand your boundaries. You've got to be able to understand how your life has affected you on so many levels and made you feel less than worthy. So, and of course, because I do have contact with so many of you, I am getting their messages coming through. How are you, Andrea? And people are saying to me, things have changed. People have contacted them. A lot of twin flames are already getting some sort of communication coming through, which is awesome. But other people who've been waiting on love are starting to get the initial phases of it coming through. So it's coming. It's coming. If you've been waiting for love, if you've been waiting for the right person and you've shed all of your doubts about yourself, if you're to the point where you are feeling the love for yourself that you've always felt for others, then you're nearly there. Okay, all right, let's see what's coming through in the reading. All right, so we have the Seven of Cups. This is beautiful to get this here. So I always talk to people about illusions. So we start off life as children very, very innocent with no imprint on us. We might bring stuff through from other past lives. We may have some stuff sort of imprinted in our DNA, but we're clean slates in terms of the 3D world when we're born. If we are taught things about ourselves that aren't true, so if you have a child who keeps getting told that they're useless, they're hopeless, they'll never amount to anything, any of those things, the child actually starts to believe that's true, especially with the amount of love that empaths are born with. So then what happens is they grow up believing that is the truth, and it becomes an illusion. So your whole world is built on a faulty foundation, the tower. So there is this energy here that you are, I want to say, cracking through. I love that. You are cracking through something here. So maybe see it that you're in an egg, and the eggshell needs to be broken before you can come through. But the only way you can break that eggshell is by being in the right space at the right vibration. So a chicken can't hatch until it's ready, right? So you are now about to crack through some sort of illusion to be born. So for many of you, it will be obviously the closing out of that cycle, the egg. But for many of you, it's also about being reborn, rebirthed, coming into a new time where you are experiencing life as yourself. There is no fear anymore. Your fears are gone. You've got nothing to lose. You're ready to take on the world, and you're starting all over again. So you're letting go of all of those 3D impressions of who people thought you were. And don't forget, people do that because of their own insecurities, their own idiosyncrasies. So if you've got someone around you who's continually giving you negative programming, then it's going to be a little difficult for you to crack through that. But you are, because we have the illusion card here. All right. So I have the Six of Cups coming through. So again, talking about the past, and we'll have a little chat about some of those things a bit further on. The Six of Cups talks about nostalgia and reminiscing. Now, when this card comes up, and in this particular one, we have a crow sitting at the top of the card, which is quite interesting. I've seen a lot of crows lately. But this is a card of going back to the past and remembering things. And we want to go back and remember the good stuff. We want to now let go of all the stuff that's held us back. So for many of you, this is letting go of past energy now. You're starting to understand that doesn't serve you. It did. It has up until now. It has served you. It served to remind you of who you are. So now we're clearing this energy away here because of this illusion. So we have some sort of illusion about the past here that needs to be cleared. Wow, we have the Three of Cups coming through. So the Three of Cups is about celebration. It's celebrating with family and friends. Sometimes it can talk about reunions, coming back with people, possibly people from the past here. Now that you've perhaps broken through some sort of illusion, you're going to find that people will naturally disappear from your life, but new people will come in because you're rebirthing. So you're bringing in a whole new family. And this is what's so beautiful about it, is you get to do it all differently. All right, so I have the Six of Swords here. So nicely moving away from troublesome times. So leaving the past behind, celebrating, cracking through that illusion, moving forward. Okay, so we have the Nine of Swords. This is a card I relate to greatly because this has been for me a little bit more of a difficult path, because I have been, which some of you do know, and many of you would talk about yourselves. When you're empathic and when you've had a tough upbringing, you tend to have a higher level of anxiety. So throughout my life, I've battled anxiety, negative thinking, being really tough on myself, which has led to me becoming a perfectionist, a workaholic. The self-righteousness is something you have to work with. And also, I want to talk about the responsibility, what I call over-responsibility. So feeling responsible for everything that happens in the world. So some of those things are a normal part of the anxieties that come through. And I've coped really, really well. I had terrible panic disorder in my 30s. I got through that. I worked through a lot of insecurities after that. Like many of you, the eating disorders, the tendency to go up and down in your weight, to try and pad yourself so you don't get hurt. All of those things I've experienced along the way. I don't relate to any of those anymore. So I don't think that it's right for me personally to say that I still suffer from those things, because I don't feel that I do anymore. But what I do suffer from is still nighttime terrors. So during the day when I'm meditating, when I'm calm, my anxieties are really low. But sometimes at nighttime when I'm sleeping, I get awoken by something, and then the anxiety will kick in big time and it will keep me awake. And as many of you know, I'm very often up at 3 and 4 o'clock in the morning because of that. Because once I start thinking, the only way to stop that is by getting up and doing things and meditating. Now, on occasion, I can get back to sleep, but not often. But I'm getting much better at it. So since I've been on holidays here, of course, I go back to sleep. I get up, I do a meditation, and then I meditate back to sleep again, which has been awesome. So I still relate very much to the Nine of Swords energy. So if you're doing the nighttime thing and you still have those nighttime dreams or the nighttime energies, I haven't been dreaming so much since I've been here, which has been beautiful too. So there's a very good lesson for me to learn. I have to be at home like I am on holidays. But that is nighttime anxiety coming through there. Ten of Swords right behind it. So we're closing out the cycle on that as well. And we have the Three of Wands here, forward movement. So if this is what you're working on at the moment, or you're trying to understand at a much deeper level, then you will be sort of moving through this now too. This for me is the last step in my journey in terms of my learning. See, now I've tried a lot of things. I have been, I could give you some stories on this. I have been on the strongest sleeping things, the strongest relaxants. I've tried all of them because the doctors said, well, if we get you on so many days of these and then, you know, we break this cycle that you're on, but doesn't make any difference. It's like they act as stimulants for me. So I don't really know what that is. But I tried melatonin. I tried slow release, the one that comes from the doctor. So I've tried them all. A beautiful person came up on here one time and said to me, take coffee out of your diet. I took coffee out of my diet, stopped drinking coffee, didn't make any difference. I'm not a drinker, so I don't drink. I have the occasional glass of wine. It is crazy. It's just my mind. It's starting to, I'm getting there. So if any of you are going through it, you can get past it. All right, so we have the Eight of Pentacles coming through with the Three of Pentacles here. That's interesting energy there with the Four of Swords. Right, so we have some very interesting energy coming through here. Some of you, I want to say that for some of you here, there is an energy of feeling like this is really hitting you in the workspace. So awakening here is helping you to see around you in the workplace how people treat you. So there may be a lot of people watching here who find that they're either bullied at work or pushed around at work or don't get the opportunities at work. Now, I watched this thing on psychopaths a couple of days ago because apparently I can't remember the study of psychopathy, but there's always one psychopath in your workplace. There's somebody there who sort of gets thymus thumping. Hey, Rosie. Thymus thumping. I haven't even heard of that one, so I'll be looking into that. But I feel like some of you now that you're awakening are perhaps starting to understand your patterns at work. That's what I want to say here. There's like this strong energy that you're seeing patterns at work. Perhaps patterns of bullying. Perhaps you're not seeing them at home yet or in your personal life, but they're going to start showing in the workplace. So this would be things like you working extremely hard. You may be working harder than everybody else in the workplace. You may be putting in so much energy, so much enthusiasm. You may be contributing, but yet you see other people move past you. So other people may get opportunities. They may be picked on. And what I want to say to you is once you start seeing through the illusion and you see these people who seem to be able, I almost say they want to manipulate other people. So if you're not easily manipulated or you understand manipulation, you may be pulling back. These are the people who are seen as the suckers, the sucker-uppers in the workplace. And they go a long way and you think, why is it I'm doing everything I need to be, but yet I don't get the opportunities other people do? So sort of ask yourself some of those questions, because I feel like some of you are seeing it in the workplace, these cycles, but you're not seeing it in your home life yet. And I want to say that it's coming to you. Once you see what's happening at work, you may be able to understand how it's happening in your day-to-day life. Because for some of you here, there is a really big call from the universe to understand your soul contract and where you're going. So I feel like for some of you, this pattern, Gigi's talking about recognizing her pattern. For some of you, this is going to help you see how this pattern affects you in other areas of your life. So if you don't feel that you're good enough, what you tend to do as a person is go, I'm not good enough. I'm not being noticed. I'm not being seen. You may feel invisible. So what do you do to counteract that? Is you work harder. You force yourself more. You do more work because you want to be seen. But actually that doesn't work. Because you hear this thing about this working smarter, not harder. Does that mean you have to suck up to people? No, not at all. But you have to understand expanding yourself, putting in more from yourself is just going to burn you out. It doesn't make anybody notice you anymore. So for people who, especially the psychopaths, the narcissistic people that are in the workplace, they don't see you. They don't want to see you. And the reason you get overlooked is probably because you're working harder than them. You have much more to give and you are much more valuable, but you make them look good if they're your boss. And they probably take credit for you a lot of the time. So there is this energy of you understanding a pattern through your workplace. But there is also a lot of threes in this reading. We've been coming up with a lot of threes lately in readings. Threes and eights have been very, very common. And there's a feeling here that you are starting to understand how to let go of that baggage and that illusion. And once you step through that, people will start to notice you more. You'll find that you'll be seen more, which you probably, as I said, haven't felt before. Because I can imagine many of you are sort of sitting there and going, people don't seem to see me. I feel invisible. So something is happening here. But what I want to say to you with the Four of Swords here, there is a need for you to be kind to yourself, to always understand that it's important to make sure that you're doing everything for yourself here. So making sure you've got enough sleep, you're eating well, you're meditating, whatever you need to do. And this is very strong energy in the universe at the moment around our physical bodies, around who we are as human beings. Very much so. The call is here to eat more naturally, or as I say, to eat clean. And to understand how important that is at this time of awakening, that you are doing the best thing you can for your body too. So, okay, so let's just get a Wisdom of the Hidden Realms card, and then we'll have a bit of question time, because I know that some of you were wanting to talk about childhood trauma, and I'll do my best to answer some questions for you. All right, what's coming out? Oh, the Hawk Prince. Oh my goodness, this is one of my favorite cards. Okay, this is about spirit communication and paying attention. It's card 11. I remember the first time I ever got this card because I went out and bought the deck because I loved it so much. Have a look. It just resonated with me so strongly. All right, so the Hawk Prince appears with good news. He flies into your life to alert you that a message is coming to help you manifest your destiny. Expect a phone call, letter, email, or conversation that lets you know the next step to take toward your greatest good, or to tell you that you've arrived at an important stage along your path. The Hawk Prince is also the ally for spirit communication. So pay attention when you think you hear something important pop out at you on the radio or TV, or in overhearing the conversations of strangers. Spirit is constantly in dialogue with you. Are you listening? Stay open and expect Spirit to speak to you and show you the way to your prosperity in all aspects of your life. So for many of you, you're right on the doorstep here of understanding what is happening. All right, let's move. All right, so I had a lot of people talk about yesterday about childhood trauma. So I want to give you a little bit of an understanding because it's really pertinent to the twin flame journey. So when you are born into a family, your family do the best that they think they can do with you. And if they're slightly damaged or not very understanding people, if they see you, if your parents are very young, they may not have the experience to raise you in a healthy way. So very often we have what I term inadequate parenting, inconsistent parenting. Hi, how you going? Inconsistent parenting, but parenting that perhaps isn't really showing you the love and care that you need. Now, we can take the blame off people because there's no point in blaming. You're already here. So what's happened to you is part of what it is. So we have to learn to let go of it once we've understood it. Because at the end of the day, your journey is your journey. But if you're born to parents who are very inconsistent parents. So you may have parents who are absent parents, say for example, father or mother who works all the time, who's never home to really show you love. You may have lots of people who've raised you. You may be lucky enough that you've been able to spend time with family members who do or have the capacity to love you. But what starts to happen is you get an insecure or an anxious type. So you become an insecure or an anxious child. And if you are not then reassured or given the love you need to understand that, then that can become very impactful as a child and further into life. So if you want to look up, hey Rebecca, how you going? If you want to look up Erickson's work, he was one of the people I related to so much when I've done my work over the years. Erickson's table of child development is very, very easy to understand. But most of the psychologists, sociologists understand that a child's development is mainly done before the age of 2. So most of what happens to us before the age of 2 makes a really big imprint. So in the early months, you start to develop your sense of trust. So for example, let's say, you're crying in your cot and your healthy parent will come in and check what is wrong with you. They'll pick you up, they'll check your nappy, they check to see whether you need feeding, they give you a little bit of a cuddle, and then they'll pop you back to bed once they know you're okay. Now, in a healthy way, they might let you cry for, just a short amount of time, because we do need to learn how to self-soothe as children. So a little bit of crying doesn't hurt us, a little bit. If a child's becoming hysterical, over the top crying, then that is not healthy crying. Healthy crying is the crying you do because you can't go to sleep yourself, but you need to learn how to self-soothe, how to become independent. Now, if a child is crying and a parent doesn't always come to them, then there is a feeling for the child that they are not loved, or they can't trust that when they cry, somebody attends. Now, this is a baby, so a baby doesn't know how to distort that or manipulate that, right? So they can't just cry to get parents' attention. I think the first 6 months is probably more around the child crying because of the more natural things that a child does. So it's not a manipulative thing in those early months. It may be later down the track that a child will cry because they know they get attention. That's always like somewhere down the track. But in those first few months, it's not, the child doesn't have the capacity to work that out. So what happens then if you're crying, and sometimes mum comes in, sometimes they don't. So if you have a parent, for example, I've seen this a lot in areas where I've worked, where parents have drug or alcohol problems, for example. So they may be too drunk to attend to you, or to, and this is extreme, but they may not be able to do the job of a parent. So you're crying consistently, not really understanding why nobody's coming. And that sort of starts to distort your sense of being loved or being able to trust that somebody loves you back. Now, as the time goes by, and with Erickson's chart, he talks about the different timelines, which is really, really good. And he'll start to break it down. But what happens is, in basic theory, is if you haven't got the trust there to start with, if your sense of trust and love is distorted in those first few months, then what is built upon that is a false foundation, because you don't have the trust to marry that into what you already know. So therefore, as you grow up, all the other development points along the way all get distorted because they can't trust, or you can't trust as a person, that something is going to be right for you, that you're going to be loved, or you're going to be cared for, or somebody's going to be there for you. And this is probably, it's great because what this teaches you somewhat is to become self-sufficient, but it distorts all of the other things then, like the over-responsibility, feeling like you have to fix everybody else, look after everybody else. All those things come out of that time because you're trying really hard then as you grow up to try and do what wasn't done for you. So you get this overt sense of responsibility. And I always say to people, you can tell whether you have this because, for me, I used to think when people threw cigarettes out of the car, how irresponsible. I wanted to go over, I wanted to hit them. How dare you throw the cigarette out the car? You could cause a bushfire. That is over responsibility. You are not responsible for that. But what happens is you grow up thinking you're responsible for everything. So you worry about your siblings, you worry about the people around you. What does that do? Gives you a really heightened sense of anxiety as well. So inconsistent parenting can often lead to what we talk about, and this is really brief and you can go in and have a look, but we call it attachment theory. So what happened is you never developed a healthy attachment to either or one of your parents or both. There was never a healthy attachment because you never felt then as you grew up that you were good enough to have their love because you didn't get that consistently. You didn't get the person. Many of us grew up with parents that never told us they loved us, never hugged us. That was it. So you grow up with this sense of, I'm not lovable, but you try to do everything for everybody else, which means, of course, eventually you burn yourself out. You burn your batteries out trying to be everything to everyone. So what happens then is you grow up with a very distorted sense of relationships to others. So this doesn't just start and finish with your parents. It starts to manifest all over the place. Yes, neglected children. Yes. Yeah. And you've got to be really careful because sometimes you will overdo it. How are you, Hayley? It was so lovely to catch up with you yesterday. So what starts to happen then? When you grow up and you start developing relationships for yourself, you either find you don't trust people. You may find, that, hey, Carla, how are you? You don't trust people that come into your life. But in your romantic relationships, you so desperately want to be loved by someone, you develop some sort of attachment disorder through your processes as a child. So for example, let's talk about healthy attachment. So this comes down to, if you want to look it up, it's called abandonment issues. So the abandonment in a childhood. So you may have some sort of abandonment issues from what I was just talking about with your parents, and that develops into an attachment disorder. There are basically three types of attachment disorder. There is the sort of the anxious one, but we'll go into this a little bit later. There's the anxious, the ambivalent, and healthy, all right? So what starts to happen is you start to develop one of those things. So if you're an anxious person, you may always feel that for a relationship, you've got to people please. Comes out of all of this because that's part of the over responsibility, pleasing everybody else. If you are an anxious person, you may want to have love so desperately in your life, but when it comes in, you don't trust it, so you push it away. There you can see from the childhood stuff. An anxious person will want to have relationships, do not trust the relationships, do not trust the person that they're dealing with, and will often set off to self-sabotage relationships. So somebody will be totally in love with you, tell you how much they're in love with you, want to be with you, but you don't trust them, you're scared of getting hurt again, you know it has happened in the past, so you push them away. With the next one we see is the player energy. They're the person who can't make a commitment. They want to be loved too, but they're frightened of being loved because of all this energy the same way they had in childhood. So what they do is they fall in love. they feel the love, it terrifies them and they push away because they don't want to deal with that. So what they prefer to do is sort of play the field and have a lot of, I guess, smaller relationships or lesser relationships because they enjoy the thrill of falling in love. They enjoy that limerence, that early stages, but then they push away as well. So they're the people we often see as the players, the non-committal types. All the same, but the thought of love frightens them more than anything. And then you get the secure type. So the secure type of love, the children who've been raised by very loving parents who give them the love and attention they need, and they grow up. And the really funny part here, which is quite interesting, is secure types of people often attract secure people. So they learn to recognize that in each other. So you see these relationships that have been, are really healthy. They've been long term, and two people who can get along beautifully well together. And then you see the other types. So I'm going to go into a little bit deeper into the anxious and avoidant types. Melissa, yes, absolutely. I teach a lot of this in my coaching because once I've spoken to people when I'm coaching, if I speak to people about, just generally how they grew up, what sort of life they had, etc., I can already understand some of your type. Okay, so that's why I do the coaching. So the anxious and avoidant people tend to attract each other. Now, I don't know why this is. If I take it from a psychological point of view, I'd say that we both sort of magnet what we mirror in other people. But it's not really a mirror because it's actually the opposite. But just wait with me for a moment. The secure people attract each other for some reason. They recognize that in each other. The anxious people tend to go after the avoidant people, and the avoidant people seek out the attachment of the anxious attachment people. And they are the people who often come together. And this is a recipe for disaster because here is this person that's avoidant who gets into the relationship, feels some sense of love for the person and pushes them away. And of course, the anxious person's like, oh my God, this person's going to hurt me, push me away, I'm going to push them away. So you get this energy between the two people of like these repelling magnets. These two people desperately want to be together. They see something in each other that's so incredibly good, but one person's avoiding the relationship because they don't want to get hurt. The other person wants the relationship and keeps chasing after that person, but that terrifies this person, so they go. This is where the twin flame energy comes from, you see, why you have a runner and a chaser. Because the runner gets in, realizes the depth of love, realizes the power that this person has over them, and they freak out and run. The anxious person goes, oh my God, I really love this person. They keep chasing them, but the avoidant person keeps running. So what happens there is it scares both very, very deeply. It scares both people, and very often puts some sort of barrier between them where they can't come together because they can't do anything until they're healed. So if you take the twin flame energy, that's where that comes from. Now, I'm not talking about abusive relationships here. I can talk about that a little bit more because what happens with a lot of people, they feel that if they're dealing with someone here who's an avoidant, who's become so distorted in their avoidant state that they've become abusive in some way, shape or another, or narcissistic, which is often where we find this energy, all right? This is where your narcissist sits. Just briefly, a narcissist too is a deeply damaged person. Okay, we don't know what makes one person narcissistic, one person empathic. We don't know that. It's the bit about the abuse. It's if you've lived an abusive childhood, then you can grow up to be a perpetrator of abuse, or you can grow up to be the entire opposite and be empathic. What makes people different is something in their DNA, something much deeper within them here. It's not something that you can define. So, but a narcissist will always sit on that non-committal side. But if they can get hooked by the empath, if they can get hooked into a relationship because the empath almost believes that they can be mothering, Absolutely. I'm talking about from the psychological point of view, though, Rebecca. I'm not talking from the spiritual perspective at the moment. I'm talking from the psychology of all of this. The person who's narcissistic or, oh, beautiful, no worries, thank you. The person who's narcissistic will want the mothering. They want the loving. They want to have all of those things. They want to have the stuff they missed out on from childhood. But the narcissistic person only considers them. They only consider themselves. They come from a very me perspective. Everything is about them, remember. Whereas the empath wants the same things. They want the loving, they want the kindness, they want to have a relationship, they want to be able to trust. But they put everything outside of themselves. So they do all the loving, all the caring. And what happens for the narcissist, this brings them a sense of getting what they want. But then their relationship then comes from control rather than the giving. But then the empath then does what they need to manipulate that energy to come towards them too. So for some unknown reason, we see the narcissist as all bad and we see the empath as all good. And this is what I always say to people. Actually, the empath has a lot of traits and a lot of damage that they need to heal as well. How are you, Donna? So there's healing required on both sides. But the narcissist, because they're very me-focused, it's very difficult for them to see that they have an issue or problem, and they're not very easy to heal. If someone has narcissistic tendencies, it's possible they can heal. But the empath has narcissistic tendencies too. So if you've been raised by a narcissist, if you've had narcissistic parents, both parents or one parent, then you can find that the children of those parents can often be one or the other. How are you, Sarah? So what happens then in relationships is one person, both want the relationship. Okay. I have done a little bit of work on this. It's so much easier. Rebecca just asked about how do they interplay. So if you go to a psychologist, the psychologist will tell you the way I've just told you. That's how it all works. And if you want to look it up, all of that information is on the internet. When we see the twin flame energy and we see what happens in a twin flame relationship, it is exactly the same in terms of the parenting, the upbringing, the narcissism from some parents. All of those things still interplay in the psychology. What I want to say is the twin flame relationship has been around since the beginning of time. I mean, Shakespeare talks about it. It's written into history. For some unknown reason, we've got this idea that it is about abuse and about people abusing people. But there sort of seems to be this energy of people thinking that the psychology has the answers and other people thinking the spirituality has the answers, but actually both interplay. So I feel if I take it from a spiritual perspective, so I'm going to put it on the table from a spiritual perspective. We choose through our Akashic record who we were going to be born to. We are born with our memories erased. So we have no memory of past lives, where we've come from, whether you're a starseed, whether you are believing another perspective. You have no memory when you're born. Some children seem to escape that, and I have seen children who've had memories of past lives. Some of them can't be disproven. It's quite interesting. But for the most of us, our memories are erased. So we have no idea of our spiritual gifts, who we were before, whatever. And we choose to come into an environment where we get to understand who we are over a period of time. So we have the human experience. So we're born with no memories. We're born to people we pick ourselves for whatever reason when we write the Akashic record. So if you haven't had your Akashic record done, I'd highly recommend it. It can be quite expensive. I have the training to do it, but I haven't quite embarked on it yet, but I'm coming. So what happens then is we grow up in a family that are there to teach us about ourselves. So we pick them because we know through their abuse or whatever else, or the way they are, that they can teach us how to understand who we are. Now, with twin flames, good night, Chandra. Yeah, the trauma stays, but you've got to release the trauma. That's so much part of the journey. Okay, so that's what you have to work on in this lifetime, is releasing all of this. The Akashic records are very, very interesting to understand your journey. So you are born into a family that teaches you who you are. And for some of us, it takes years and years to get rid of all of the stuff we've learned to understand who we truly are on the underneath. Now, you can sit here, you can practice on me. Oh, you're gorgeous. For some of us, this is a really long journey. For some of us, it's taken, many, many years to understand who we are, and we have to get rid of all the ego stuff. So spiritually, we are working on ridding ourselves of the ego. That is our primary journey. For me, my understanding from what I've learned along the way and what my soul contract is our lives are about self-love. We have to learn to self-love. We have to self-love because we need to develop who we are. We need to have healthy relationships. We need to raise beautiful children. All of those things. We are learning through self-love. And that is the most important thing. Now, oh, you're welcome, Heidi. You can work on all of this stuff. You can heal yourself. So don't think you can't, even though it is really, I'm going to try and make them a little bit cheaper. That's my intention, but I've got to work out how to do that. I think I paid about $350 for mine, so they're quite expensive to have an Akashic record done, but very valuable because you can sit on them. I've had 2 now, and you can see your progression along the way. So what happens with twin flames is the universe is trying to bring people together for the greater purpose of the universe. And it is around the self-love and the developing relationships and teaching other people about relationships. But very often with the twin flame, it becomes so complicated and so complex because of this energy of the ego and ridding yourself of an ego. So as human beings, we shouldn't be in that energy. And if you have a very secure upbringing, your ego will never stop you from taking risks. It will never stop you from trying new things, which means that your level of self-love to start with is much higher. So you learn through self-love how to love others. Now, I always talk about this because it's really important for you to understand self-love, which is obviously my mission on the planet. So self-love is something that you feel so deeply for yourself that you love yourself as much as you would love other people, which is not what we do as people pleasers, is it? So as people pleasers, we want to love everybody. We want to give everybody our love. We want to hand it round. But we don't do it, we don't give it to ourselves. So we're already distorted in that people-pleasing mode. Now, what people say very often is, but I like doing things for other people. Well, ask yourself, why do you like doing things for other people? Why do you like doing things for other people? Because very often there is a payoff in that. So if you like doing things for other people, it's because it makes you feel good. But really and truly, you should feel good anyway. So you shouldn't be pleasing other people to feel good. So the level of self-love, if you've got children, this is a really good way to explain it. If you have children or you have parents you love really incredibly, you should feel the love for yourself that you have for your children. And I say to people often, tell me about the love you have for yourself. And people say, I don't love myself. And I say, fine. Tell me about the love you have for your children or someone else, your partner or your mother and father. Tell me about the love you have for them. And they describe these beautiful feelings of, they make me feel warm inside. I feel really trusted when I'm with them. I love being in their energy. It makes me feel good when they smile. A level of love makes me feel warm and mushy inside, and I love it. And then you say to them, do you feel that love for yourself? And they just look at you blankly. You should be feeling that level of love for yourself. You should be able to look in a mirror and look at yourself and think, I love you so much. You are so important to me. Sorry, I've got lots of messages coming through. I've got a sick son at the moment. And that's the level of love you should have for yourself. Now, there are some ways that you can raise your level of love. Absolutely. So you've got to work on what you like about yourself first. That is so important. But you've also got to work on that inner child. So you've got to clear the energy that makes all that energy I was talking about earlier, about distortion, believing you weren't good enough, all of that stuff that comes from childhood has to be moved aside, because that is blocking your self-love. So when we talk about cycles, for example, the universe shows us that we are going through the same patterns over and over again because we're not loving ourselves. So it's the secret to all things. It's the secret to all things. It's what's blocking you from having the love you want, because you will keep getting sent the same people, and the universe is saying to you, you are being sent these people because you do not love yourself. These people are reflecting the level of self-love you have. So if your level of self-love is really low, then you are going to keep bringing people who have a very low level of self-love. If you are mirroring towards someone the level of energy back to them, it can change the whole way you see yourself. So if you're starting to surround yourself with really positive, loving people, they will reflect back to you how much you are loved. It's a beautiful relationship. Where you actually feel really good when you leave that person's company because you feel like you're loved. It makes such a difference. But if you're out there trying to find a relationship, thinking that falling in love is all it takes, and you're not working on your own level of self-love, you're just going to keep pulling in the same people who have the same distorted level of self-love as you do, because they are mirroring you. And this is why the twin flames are brought together. And again, why anxious and avoidant people are brought together, to mirror to each other how to heal. Now, psychologically, we cannot still explain that. Self-love from ego. Okay. Yeah, the ego's not your own. So the first place you need to start looking at is when your ego is talking, whose voice is it? Ask yourself, stop each time and go, why am I saying that to myself? Whose voice is it? Because you will often hear the person's voice who said that to you. Self-love is a completely different thing. Self-love is a feeling. It's a feeling that comes from within. And it should feel the same for you when you try to feel your own self-love. It should feel the same for you as the love you have for your children. You know, you might have 4 children, and one of them you may feel particularly bonded to or particularly close to. It may not mean you love your children differently, but you might feel a connection to one of your children that you don't feel for the others. Ask yourself about the love you feel for that child. Describe it. Describe the love. How do you feel about your child? And then go back to your own inner child and say, how do I feel about myself? Is it the same? Because it should be. So if you want to do a really good trick with that, you can look at yourself in the mirror and do the mirror trick. It's really powerful, but it's painful to do. Really painful. It's hard to hold your gaze. It's hard to let go of the person that you thought you were and try to see the love within yourself. And once you hit that love, you will not stop crying, because you realize how horrible you've been to yourself for such a long time that you haven't seen yourself. Why you bring yourself or a mirror in of you? I guess to reflect back to you what's missing or what's not working for you. Everybody reflects something to us. Every person that we meet, every person along the way reflects back to us something about ourselves. There's a beautiful, Melissa, that's beautiful. His ego is not bigger than anybody. You can understand your ego. You will understand your ego. I point mine out now and I go, oh, that was my ego. Because it's really cool, because you start to see it so blatantly when you start to awaken your self-love. I'm missing some of the messages, so I will try to get back to you a little later. So let's just recap this, because I don't want to be talking for too much longer. It's nearly an hour, and these are so hard to upload where I am. So, okay, so if we talk about, people can say you are good on so many levels, but that to me is to accept that we're divined by another source. Well, I'm highly spiritual. I see psychology as only a small component of healing. So for me, psychology doesn't cut it. I did psychology, it doesn't cut it. I did sociology, doesn't cut it. If I do spirituality, then it completes all of the things we learn about ourselves. But you can't do it without the spiritual component. Why? Because we're all different. Psychology bunches us together. It says you fit in this box. These are the things you are. These are the things you've done. This is your box. Sociology takes a whole culture into consideration. It looks at everybody within that culture. It talks about how we learn to be in a world. So we learn from everything around us, the people around us, everything. Psychology talks about the human experience as an individual. Spirituality talks about all that and more, because what spirituality teaches you is all those things. So you can't have just psychology, because if you don't fit in the box, where do you fit? So this is why sometimes when you hear people say, for example, with the twin flame energy, if you're looking at that purely from a psychological point of view, you can't make sense of it at all. Psychology doesn't talk to you about mirroring people. It doesn't talk to you about the entire universe. It doesn't talk to you about being a collective and being a part of everyone's energy. It doesn't talk about those incredible connections you have with people. It doesn't really embrace your individuality. And that is where it misses the point. So there are things in psychology we cannot explain. There are things that we cannot explain, whereas in spirituality, we accept that we can't explain everything because we're learning. Once we get to that point where we have all the answers, well, how amazing would that be? But would it? Sometimes I think the people around the world I might not want to learn more about. What I do know a lot about is I know a lot about childhood, I know a lot about narcissism, I know a lot about relationships, but I've done all this myself. I've done all of this, the dance of the narcissist empath, the toing and froing, the trying to prove myself, the validation. I've never, ever got through life without doing all of these things. What I talk to you about, I have done. This is all through my own experience because I have a highly perceptive, intuitive personality. If I want to learn something, I want to learn from the 3D perspective, I want to learn from the 5D perspective, and I want to be able to look at them from both perspectives. I want to understand you as well as me. I want to understand what makes me tick so that I can understand how you tick. That's why it's so important to understand that psychology is only one component. That's it. So if people are sort of like, for example, if you have a broken relationship and you're needing support and you need someone to work with you, psychology, counseling, brilliant. It opens you up, it helps you to speak, it helps you to work through the pain of the 3D. It helps you to work through everything that fits in the box, everything that fits in a textbook beautifully, and you need that. So it has its place. It's like medical has its place. I'm a huge follower of metaphysical illness. So always when somebody's unwell, I say to them, go and have a look at the metaphysical reason for your illness and understand, even if you need a doctor, even if you need medicine, how did you create that in the first place? What part of you created that part? Why is your body hurting in that particular place? Why do you have those things? Because you can stop yourself from getting more sick or from getting more things if you understand why you have that. So say, for example, asthma, grief. It's where you hold grief in your lungs. So you can work with your asthma by using medications, but if you have a greater understanding that you've stored grief there, then you can work on the more 5D level with that. So the psychology is perfect, it's brilliant, it's worthwhile, but it will only help you to a certain point. And after that, you need to reach out spiritually to understand where it's helping you at a far higher level. So, for example, let's have a look at relationship breakdown. This is a really good one. So the counsellor can listen to you open up about your experience. You can work with your emotion. You can bring all of those things to the surface. It's really, really good for you. But they don't try to help you understand what the basis of all that. Hey, how are you, Casey? What the basis for all those things are. So by understanding it from the higher level perspective, you can understand that it's probably got a lot to do with your childhood, your upbringing. The psychologists won't explain all that to you. They're only helping you while you're in the box. So they're helping you in the moment. There is no real reason for them to give you a breakdown on what brought you to this point. But if you understand that a little bit more, then it's helpful to your healing. Oh, okay. So you found the, thanks, Queen of Water. You found that the planetary alignments at the moment have really made a difference. So I didn't feel this Scorpio, and I have a Scorpio rising. I didn't feel this this Scorpio moon as much as some of the others. Okay, that's really interesting. So, for example, I have done work with people through coaching where people have gone to counsellors for years or psychologists for years and have never really made good improvements in themselves. And I have coached those people who said to me they've got more out of my coaching than what they have out of years of going to a counsellor. But you see, as human beings, we believe, we're ego-driven. We believe that other people have the answers. We don't know that they lie within ourselves. We see other people as having all of the information. We see other people as having the expertise and the knowledge, and that's fine. It is really good that those people do because they can help us to a certain level. But if we don't understand what makes us tick, who we are as an individual, they are never going to get to know you to be able to tell you that. You have to do that yourself. So you can't completely put your hands in somebody else's hands. It's ego that does that. This person has more information than me. This person is more educated than me. This person has all the answers, so I have to listen to this person. When in reality, there comes a point with all of that where you've learned all you can, and then you have to dig deep inside yourself because, thank you, we have all the answers. But we have to learn to trust our intuition. We have to trust ourselves. Does that mean you poo-poo all the other stuff? No, you still have to have the medical treatment. You still have to go to a psychologist if you need to work stuff out, but they will not give you all the answers. Meditation's very good. Meditation's really good. Therapist to your therapist. Oh, thank you, Sue. I'm glad you're enjoying them. So I was only going to go to an hour and we're now over an hour. So quickly, I'm going to do a quick closing. And I feel like what would be really, really good. Oh, you're welcome, Joan. You know you're always welcome. What we might do is next time I do one of these sessions, I might do a question and answer session and see if we can do it that way, because I feel like a lot of you have got questions that I can probably help you to find the answers. So we might do it that way next time. But thank you so much for joining me. Thank you so much for the thumbs up. Always beautiful that you counselling a psychologist. Yeah, I remember going to a psychologist once, and every time I said something from my own experience, she told me I didn't have the qualifications to say that. I was like, really? You've not lived my life. How dare you tell me I don't have the qualifications? For example, really good one. If you call somebody a narcissist, they tell you that you don't have the qualifications to call someone a narcissist. Experience a narcissist and tell me you don't have the qualifications. All right, have a wonderful day. I love you all. Thank you so much for joining me. Good turnout today. It's been wonderful. Thanks for the thumbs up. Mwah.